Hi, Roger McGull here, VP of Radar at O'Reilly, and I'm at the AI Conference 2019 in San Jose, and I'm here with Kurt Muehmel. He's the Chief Customer Officer at Dataiku. Welcome, Kurt.
Thanks very much, Roger. Pleasure to be here.
And you had mentioned that when you talked in your talk that enterprises may be managing millions of deployed ML models in the future. Like, sounds kind of unreasonable, but is that reasonable? And kind of what time scale are you thinking this is going to happen?
Sure. I think the short answer is yes, it is reasonable. The question is when. The question is both when and how, because we see this great acceleration over the past already 12 years, 15 years, when we've been doing, let's call it modern data science. And so we can anticipate that trend is going to continue and accelerate. And so what we've seen already is a lot of advances made in terms of automating the development and the management of models. Now, that's a subtly different thing than auto machine learning, auto ML that we often hear a lot about, because it's not just about automating the generation of new features or hyperparameterization or a lot of these other techniques which are valuable. It's much more about templating processes, automating the QA, the QC, the quality assurance and control process of validating these models, monitoring them when they're in production. And given the means to do that, which is something that of course we're working very, very closely on, is of course the necessity and the value that comes from that. Because we can imagine the potential where you have so many different, if you're a manufacturer, it might be assets and factories around the world, augmenting those with the potential of machine learning for the very first time. That's incredibly powerful. The gains are not made in making a model 2% more perfect than another model. It's about actually just getting the first model out there, doing it for the first time, and then being able to repeat that process at scale. So yeah, we do think that's reasonable. On the time frame, maybe the median company is getting to that scale 5, 8, 10 years from now. But the real challenge is to be at the head of that pack, because the gains for those leaders are really going to be remarkable.
Mm-hmm. So, in hearing about that, one of the things I know about models is that sometimes they don't live that long.
Sure.
Is that part of the equation?
Absolutely. Yeah, because if you have millions of models that you need to maintain, it's one, bad practice, just bad business practice to leave a model out there in the wild. Its performance is going to degrade over time, and depending on the application, it may also start having negative impacts, either on your business or on the people that it's affecting. And there we get into kind of the ethical concerns around this as well. And so being able to monitor model performance over time and at scale, when we're talking about millions or even tens of millions of models being deployed out there, that becomes essential. Really, it's a necessary condition to do things responsibly, both as a business and, let's say, as a citizen.
Mm-hmm. Great. So some people talk about AI, certainly a lot of hype around it, as kind of technology for technology's sake. Where do you see the value in it? You brought a little bit up the kind of first model as being a big change for some applications.
Sure, absolutely. And there is a risk of doing technology for technology's sake. And I think that companies who are thinking about these processes need to be very conscious of that, understand what they're attempting to accomplish. Is it just to be able to tell the board that, hey, we've done it? Is it just a competition to see how many models they can do? That's not ultimately going to be that valuable. And so really being able to take the potential that we all know that machine learning has for even some of the most mundane business processes, not only the high-flying ones, but really a lot of the day-to-day, that's where we see a huge gain and a potentially massive ROI for these companies. Because once you build the capability to develop machine learning models at scale, to maintain machine learning models at scale, deploy them at scale, then really you have the ability to transform your business pretty much across the board, and that's potentially very, very important for customers in the coming years, decades, as we go forward.
So, in thinking about these kind of enterprise folks trying to get ahead of the game and do this stuff, what do they need to take into account so that they can scale to meet those needs?
I would say that there's 3 main dimensions. The first dimension is the human dimension. Scale, it's not just about technology. It's, technology is an enabler, technology is an accelerator, but ultimately it's the people who are going to be doing this. And we're looking forward to a future where there's maybe tens of thousands of people within a single company. So imagine a company where 50,000, 100,000 employees. There might be a significant portion of that company which is involved in the data science process. Now, are they all data scientists? Frankly, the terminology, it's not the most interesting question, right? It's, do you have the title or not? What's important is that they are contributing, participating in that process. And so the first element is bringing enough people in to be able to scale that process. The second is necessarily the technology and being able to operationalize what you have. Because scale, if it's just prototypes, if it's just laboratory work, that's not valuable. I shouldn't say that's not valuable. There's useful insights that are going to come from that. Exactly. It's a learning experience, which is valuable, but it's not the scale that we're talking about here. Transforming the business comes from actually operationalizing these and deploying them. And then the third point is doing it responsibly, doing responsible AI. Because if you're scaling out your practice, well, hopefully it has an impact on the world, right? Hopefully at least it has an impact on your bottom line, and hopefully there's some ROI. But the flip side of that coin is that impact can be positive, neutral, or maybe negative. And of course, if you're doing good things for the world and making money, fantastic. If you're making a bunch of money and you're not harming anyone, totally fine. Yeah, no one's going to tell you to stop. But if you're harming people, if there's unintentional biases, things like that getting built into your models, you need to be really cautious. And so to do things responsibly, that requires good governance procedures, that requires good monitoring procedures, and that ultimately requires good organizational structure to ensure that things are not happening off the books in a corner somewhere, but that really everybody is aware of what's going on. Relevant people are participating in this process to ensure that what we're doing is not causing harm.
Right. Admirably, you've been bringing up people almost always as the first item with this stuff. So clearly with these things happening, what will be the effect on employees? What do you expect?
Absolutely. I think it's a very important question. People are rightly concerned that this increase in automation, this increase in machine intelligence is going to reduce the need for humans to participate in the labor force, which understandably is frightening. This touches on people's livelihoods. And I think that we need to remember back that a couple of hundred years ago, it was something like 90 or 95% of the population was involved in agriculture, right? Today it's 2-4%, something like this. We don't have 90% unemployment. People have gone on to do more productive things. Now the difference, and a very important difference, is the speed of that change. That industrial transition was over multiple generations. A grandfather was able to say to his grandson, listen, the farm's not where it's at, move to the city. And there was time to take that into account. And so now we need to, these changes are happening even more quickly. And I think that employers, who, in that case, Dataiku customers, need to be anticipating how they can involve more people in these processes, where we can automate the most mundane aspects of the work, so that the intelligence and the incredible value that these employees have, even if they're not trained data scientists, they know about the business and they have something to contribute as well. And I think that that's important to remember, that even as we go through this next third industrial, fourth industrial revolution, that we are really engaging with the people who have something valuable to bring to that process.
So it sounds like you're in some ways advocating, maybe advocating is not the right word, but you're saying you expect a augment, not replace.
Very much, and the way that we phrase that is often around inclusion, that we're including the right people at the right time, that even if you're not a PhD, former astrophysicist, data scientist, who, don't get me wrong, are extremely valuable, and if you have them on your team, you're lucky. But even if you don't have that level of skill, that you have something to bring to the table, given all of your years of experience, given the different or outside perspective that you can bring into that process.
So, painted kind of a picture of how to get forward. How does one get started?
So I think that it's really important to choose both the right allies to work with, and that that can be external, either consultants, technology vendors, whatever that is, but also for a company internally to work with the right folks who are going to be able to be strong advocates for the process as well. One of the key topics that we often come up against in working on these transformations is acceptance and trust. So imagine a new data science practice coming with a new way of doing something. Let's say a pricing model for an insurance company. There's a long-established team that's been working on that for years. Understandably, there could be resistance. And that's why finding an ally who is open to this progress, but doing the process, developing the model, going through that development process in a measured and transparent way is extremely important to then gain the trust and the acceptance of that team. And so by building those allies with the initial successes, that's a great way to get started so that you have a strong foundation then for scaling.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And from what I know about these things is there's probably a tendency for people, the data people, to be very, not insular, but maybe not reach out as much as they should to get the organization-wide.
Indeed, it's something that we've seen quite frequently. Historically, there's been a bit of a language barrier. I'm using that metaphorically, but the truth is that somebody is writing in Python and the other person is modeling in Excel. Those are fundamentally different languages to bring together. And that's where Dataiku hopes to break down some of those barriers, not put people off into different segments or into different categories based on skill sets or educational background or whatever it may be, because we recognize that people and who you are and what you bring is not so binary. People don't fit into these neat little buckets. It's when we look at a population, it's a gradient of skills, it's a spectrum. Everyone with different things to contribute. And that's why bringing everyone into a common platform can really be so valuable.
Very interesting. So thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Roger. I appreciate it.